Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Captivating Women. As you can see, today we're recording via Zoom due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm glad to be with my girls and some special guests today. Today we're going to be talking about the level up journey and what that looks like from the male perspective. We're so used to talking about things that we can do as women to elevate ourselves spiritually and mentally. But today we're going to talk to our male guests and see what they have in store for us and things that they've implemented to grow physically and mentally. So I'll turn it over to one of our co-founders, April, so she can introduce our guests for today.
Hi guys, so glad to be back. I want to introduce these two fine men that we have on our show today. You hear that, y'all? So our first one is Gene Q. Michaels Dar, and he is a tech entrepreneur. He's going to be coming to us, giving us some of his insight. We are excited to hear it. The other one we have is Hillel Shan, and Hillel is a pharmacist. He's single, and he wanted y'all to know that, and he has. So we're excited to hear what both of these men have to say, and without any hesitation, we're going to jump right in.
Let's do it. I've missed you, ladies.
Yay,
Missed you a lot. So do we have any questions? Anybody have any burning questions that they want to ask? We're really excited to have things from the male perspective today.
Yeah, so I want to start off with, from women, we always want to start off with the single side, right? The transition from singleness into relationship. And so my question for you guys is, because we are talking about relationships, is when a man is single, I oftentimes hear that men date and they place women in certain boxes, whether that box be companionship, simply, whether that box be for sex, whether that box be for marriage, right? Sipping on that tea real hard.
let me hear about these boxes.
Right. So my question is that true, number one? And if so, let's start off with, is that true? Is that true? Is that true? Do men usually see a woman and typically put her in a particular box?
Look, I'm like.
Yeah, I know. Where's my popcorn?
Gene, you want to go first?
You go ahead, Hello.
So I think, yeah, it's true. Of course it's true. But we also got to consider at what, hopefully, the level that man is at. In other words, when I was in my 20s, I had a whole bunch of boxes. It was like,
okay.
It was
sounded like a hoarder.
I'd share, but you definitely have your boxes, whatever the definition of your boxes are, depending on your male. But at some level, my box, there was definitely a I want to get married box, right?
Just far out in the future.
Well, it sometimes, yes, it's as we have seen with the generations, I think it's definitely something that has been in your 20s, but then in your 30s, and then into your 40s for male. Female has kind of been the same thing. It's like, okay, I want to settle down and have children in your 20s, but now if you look around, women are not having children in their 20s anymore. They're pushing that out because they want to have their careers, they want to be established. They're waiting until their mid-30s to late 30s to have children and settle down also. So the generation has changed. It's interesting to watch. And so for me personally, at this age of 38, 39, and already been through a divorce, and I'm not into boxes. I know what I want now. I've evolved. I have come through the maturing phase, if you will. And so I know that there are soulmates and there's twin flames. And so I've gotten more into understanding myself. And as I've grown and understood myself, then I know, okay, I can see somebody and talk to that female and be like, okay, you're a soulmate, or you're my twin flame. So my boxes have become two now.
So let's talk about that though. I'm like, you gave me a lot of
that's a term I've never heard before, so I'm interested.
Right. So let's talk about that. What is for you soulmates, and how do you define twin flame?
The difference from twin flames and soulmates is that soulmates can be people that you connect with mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually that are going to challenge you to get better. there may be some level of hurt and traumatic experiences that you may go through with your soulmate. Your soulmate can be male or female. I've gone through, I can say I've honestly met maybe 2 or 4 female soulmates, and I've met 1 or 2 male soulmates. Like Gene, for example. Gene, I would consider like one of my very close male soulmates. Like Gene and a couple of other male friends that I have that we just completely get each other mentally, you know, physically, like in our workouts, in our thrive to be better, and our thrive to be more complete. We can pour into each other spiritually. We can pour into each other's emotionally, want to see each other better each and every day. So those are those people that come into your life to challenge you to get better. Now, the twin flame thing is a new thing that I've kind of been exploring and researching. And twin flames to me is somebody that there is no hurt. Like this person is where you're able to go into like just total oneness, but not attached. It's just unconditional love in every single interaction that you and that person have. Like, in other words, you love that person so much so that you're okay with them leaving. Like, I love you so much that I understand if you have evolved past and you want to leave, I'm going to still be okay. Like, I want you in my life, not because of any kind of dependence, but more of just that connection, that vibration, that frequency that we're on is so amazing and wonderful. Like, let's just keep vibing. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to get married right away or anything like that. It's just like we've been destined to literally be together, and this is that unification coming together where we can just continue to vibe together, and it's just unconditional love. I don't know, does that make sense?
It does. It's a strong spiritual component to it. I wanted to say there's a book by Bell Hooks called All About Love that goes into that. If you haven't heard of it, that goes into that a little bit more and dives into the spiritual component of twin flames and soulmates. But yeah, what you said made sense to me. I don't know if anybody else had any questions.
I had a question. What you said did make a lot of sense. What I wanted to ask is, how does someone really know the difference between the two? Because what I could envision is that there could be a lot of overlap between the two. So as a man, as you're approaching, dating, how do you know which falls into that category? Is that something that you could tell immediately, or does it take time, or do you just not know until you're really far into it?
I think it's now the other part of it too is like, you don't want to have boxes. Like, you just want to be open to whoever comes into your life for that kind of interaction with them. And so it's just getting to know people. That's why I'm totally a proponent, and Gene helped me out here. Like, I'm into dating multiple different women, and I date with boundaries. I'm not dating them to just have sex with them or whatever the case may be. Like, I think sex is a wonderful and absolutely amazing thing, but I'm at the point now where it's like, I want to just have sex with that one woman that is like my twin flame type person. And I'm waiting more than 2 weeks to actually have sex with somebody. You know what I mean? Like,
hey, that's
right though.
That is. Thank you for your
Gene knows what's up. There's the 1 night stand box. There's the 2 week box. There's a 1 week box. There's a 30-day box.
There's like 100 boxes.
You feel me? So my boxes have come down to just 2. So it's easier now, in knowing myself, to be able to sit down and talk to someone. That's why I love dating. I like going out and meeting new people and connecting with them, because you can really, I'll give you an example. Like, I went on a date last female, and I realized that I wasn't completely healed because our interactions and some of the problems we were already having after just dating us were based on the fact that she was operating from a lot of hurt. And I couldn't connect with her because I realized the reason that she was making decisions and talking was that she was coming from a lot of hurt. And my hurt was like, I don't want to hurt you, so I'm not going to be this open with you about something in my life. and the same thing for her. And so it was a bad union. That was not a soulmate. That's just somebody that you don't want to continue to pursue. But it's helpful to get out and talk to people, interact with people, so you know like where you're at in your process and in your journey.
So that leads me to a very important question, because I'm always thinking about our listeners. And so from a listener standpoint, which is women, when we're talking about dating and we're talking about having these interactions, oftentimes, if you do a lot of reading, they'll talk about, you want to know up front where a man stands. But then you also hear the flip side of that talks about men being turned off or scared by too much conversation up front that tries to define what it is that's happening. So when you're getting to know people, Hillel and Jean, both of you, and you're dating in your path and your relationship, how would you advise a woman to know, which I guess you're having honest conversations, but how would you be okay with a woman's second or third date asking you certain questions up front about where it is that you stand, where it is
what your intentions are?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question, because like you
How
said,
soon are you
we're always feeling like men feel that there's a lot of pressure when it comes to that, and they don't like to usually address that in a relationship up front. So yeah, how do you guys feel about that?
Is Jean's thing muted or what? Like,
I'm here.
Come on, G, this is double Dutch. Jump in.
So I think, I don't. It's very different now, because I think like the older that we get, things change. Because when we're younger, we have like 100 different boxes, and like females have boxes, and we have boxes. Except ours is much more physical. When we're younger, and it's when we get older, these boxes tend to somewhat have more depth. But when we're younger, they have depth, but they don't have like the real type of depth, because we really haven't experienced life yet. So
long-term depth.
right, and it's difficult to say that our boxes can have some kind of value when you're young and you don't really even know what it's like to really be a man. And then you meet someone who is much more advanced in life, and they're much more mature, and women are much more mature than men. And so at a younger age, in like your 20s, you have a mature person trying to fit into an immature box. And then when they see that they don't fit that, it creates this very different type of a relationship. Like it's like it's almost similar to what Hillel said. It's like, when you're younger, it's like you have different types of expectations to where you're at now. And I think more so I don't really look at it like boxes anymore, in terms, especially with dating. I really look at it from like a landscape perspective, like we have a horizontal landscape, and that's with like society, right? So that's almost like the physical landscape. Like the moment you see someone, like that's your physical attraction, that's the physical landscape. And then you have your vertical landscape, which is what I like to call is almost similar to like my spiritual landscape, is my relationship with God. And so, you meet a person and then you try to figure out, well, this person definitely fits in this landscape of my life, or this person fits into that landscape of my life. But then you also have the combination of the two. And I think that's what we can all attribute to as like our personal landscape, which is a combination of both the physical and spiritual. And that's ultimately what we want, right? In a partner, in someone that we want to be with. Like we want someone that can fit in both the physical and also the spiritual component side. And the reason why I bring up spiritual now is because I think a huge part about captivating women is for them, is that spiritual journey for what captivating women is imbuing, is a huge component, a part of who you are as captivating women. And so the spiritual component becomes very essential because, most times I've discovered in my relationship journey, I'm not on the same spiritual landscape as, the females that I might be talking to. And almost to what Halal says, it's like most times when you meet a girl who's not on the same spiritual landscape as you, right? You know, they're putting so much on you already, you don't even really know them. Like, I'm interested in you from this dating app because of our horizontal landscape. But you're coming at me like I'm spiritual, and you're hitting me with all this spiritual stuff like, this is my past, I've been hurt, I've been this, and I've been that. And, you know, depending on the type of guy, your response to that is going to be a little bit different. So it's really taking a look at that spiritual landscape. And most of the time, us as guys, we're not ready for that from the jump, in my perspective, when you first meet someone. And then I think to answer your question, it's difficult by like the third or fourth date when someone's saying, well, what's your intention? You know, I'd be interested in that intention conversation in maybe like a month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, you know?
Well, you know, the reason that I ask that is because a lot of times you feel as though a man, and this is part of, I guess, the question, because as you evolve, does a man know where he is when he is dating? I mean, you know what I mean? As a woman, we know that, okay, at this stage, you know, I'm looking to have fun, maybe, you know, I'm out here having fun, or I'm at the stage now where I feel like I've done my maturing, I've done what I need to do in order to be ready for a spouse. Does that same process happen for a man, or is a man, I mean, I guess maybe that's contingent upon each man, different, you know, it's different. But with you two fellas, do you know where you are when you're dating? Do you know what you're looking for? Or are you just kind of out here blindly, willy-nilly, and waiting for it to hit you?
I mean, the moment you meet a girl, you know what's happening. You like if we're going on a date, there's something happening right there, right? So with that intention, again, it just really depends on what landscape the female fits on. For him, it might be again spiritual, it might be physical, it might be the combination of the both, right? Some guys, you'll see a girl, like if we're going on a date, that means there's interest and I want something. I think that would be the best way I would answer that.
You know, to build on what Gene's saying, what I've been realizing is in this day and age, you have women that are very independent, which is amazing. Like, I love independent women. But then what do you define independent as, right? There's all these different movements going on, Me Too movement, equality movements and whatnot. And then it's like you open the door for a woman and she's like, don't open the door for me. So, you know, that's kind of confusing to men when you're trying to court a woman. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens, you know, as the next generation comes around. Like, because I'm watching some of these millennials, and they're just completely different. Like, what is chivalry? They don't understand what that concept is. You know, I'm still in the generation of, yeah, definitely want to open the car door, take you out, be in romantic kind of relationship with you, and add that to the relationship. But some women just don't even, they're like, whatever, because maybe they never experienced it. So, you know, to answer the other question is, there's a certain level of pursuing, like, you know, the man, it's like, yeah, these independent women, but then we want the men to pursue them. And it's like, well, I'm watching you, but you're pursuing your career. You're pursuing that car. You're pursuing that dream. Why aren't you pursuing me? You know what I mean? And there should be some kind of balance there. Like, it's okay for me to like want to pursue the women and be the man and have that role, if you will, that gender role. But I think there needs to be a mutual, not only a mutual attraction, but also a mutual desire to be with that person. And like, okay, well, if you and I are hanging out, like, who else are you hanging out with? Like, at some point you got to ask that question. Like, I don't want to just be investing into you. And what I've realized is that I'm okay with telling a woman, like, hey, listen, I just think we're going to be better off just being friends. And by day 2 or 3, I can have that. I don't need to be stringing her along. I can tell her straight up, listen, we're just going to be way better off being friends because I know exactly what I'm looking for. I know the connection I need, and I know the connection you need. I know what you've already been telling me, and that's totally fine. And I want to be fair to both of us. Like, I want to be fair to me. I want to be fair to you. I don't want you to continue in this relationship. We get hurt and you get hurt, or I get hurt, or we both get hurt. And I think that is what underlying every single relationship, the man has to take on that role and be, and being a Christian man, I realize that role comes from my relationship with Christ in saying that I am going to have to protect this woman's emotions. And can I do that? And I also need to know where this woman stands. And unfortunately, a lot of men and women today are hurt and they're broken and they are wounded. They're not broken, they're wounded. And they have some serious trust issues. I swear to you, there is some thing in our brains that you could be dating for 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. But as soon as you get married, there's this switch that comes on and it says, I'm married now. Here's all these expectations. And I have these subconscious expectations that I'm going to put on you. And if you don't meet them, then that means you're not good enough for me, or whatever the case may be. The number one killer of marriages or relationships in general is unmet expectations. And from the day one that you sit down in front of that person that you're talking to, that you're trying to understand them, there's already expectations there, whether they're conscious or subconscious. And a lot of the subconscious is from all the other relationships you've been in, from being with your parents, from your religion, from your culture, whatever the case may be. And you're bringing that to the table. You know what I mean? And one of the things I learned from my counselor, he said it this way. He said, people that have their love violated exhibit that hurt, that pain in 2 ways. They either shame or they blame. People that have their trust broken and destroyed and violated, they exhibit that in 2 ways: control and escape. And you can tell a lot from a person that says they're like a control freak or whatever, or they're very controlling, is because they don't have trust. The reason they don't have trust is they've been through a lot of stuff. And I did not want to be the control freak or go through that, and I wanted to make sure my trust was okay. So I had to go to counseling to make sure that I'm doing this thing the right way, because I do want to trust. I do want to unconditionally love.
I guess from my experience, I don't think that, I'm not a woman. So it's 3, 4 of y'all here, so
that's where we come in.
I don't think sometimes the control attitude or the control part of a woman sometimes comes from a bad relationship, right? Or from an experienced relationship. Because I know some women that are, they're really big on control. That's just, it's either they get it from their parents or they get it from, it might have been self-taught. I don't know if that's a thing that I could say, but sometimes what I've noticed is certain women are just controlled. They just, that's just who they are. And what's interesting about, and this is one thing I want to say about this conversation, is it really just depends on the person as well, because every woman obviously is very different. And some guys want a woman in control. Like, I know a few guys that are interested in a woman to, run things around, and they're okay with the, sharing responsibilities, or they're okay with her making more than him. Where I think more so for African Americans, it's very different for us, because we've been taught differently, especially in the church. We've been taught that the man is supposed to be the breadwinner. So I'm not sure if the control thing sometimes comes from a relationship. It might actually just come from, it might just come from a family or self-taught. I don't know what you girls could say about that.
I think that in the church, we were taught the same thing too. I think that as Black women, we're taught to be independent. We're taught to go out and get our education. We're taught to have it all together and be very.
You say the church taught that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say it did for me. I think that's what was bred from our perspective, because we were also taught that we were outnumbering our counterparts as well. I'm talking from a Black woman perspective, right? And so no one's going to come to save you but yourself. Yeah. So you have to be prepared. And I'm also first generation going to college as well. So that was on me, an immigrant parent. So that was on me. And having that, I think when you transition into a relationship, giving up some of those aspects of yourself that have been embedded in you for so long can be very difficult. And you're trusting somebody else to be stable, be independent, and then also have that same spiritual walk that you were talking about. I think that's where the disconnect kind of comes in the relationship from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that's a culture. That's actually a culture that has been implemented or implanted actually in my experience in church, and all the Black churches I've been to. They basically, it comes across, it's a culture, so it's understood so much so. And I know growing up, my parents, I think for me, it goes all the way back to my parents before I was even born. My parents were together. They were not in the church. And then my father and his mother and my mother all went to a church, decided to join it. And at that point, my mom said my dad changed completely. He became controlling. He was like, I'm the man. I have to make all the decisions because this is what the church tells us to do. We have to do this, A, Y, X, and Z, whatever, A through Z. And so she taught me, coming from a woman who saw a man who was one way, went into a church and then completely changed. And she taught me basically, yes, a man is the head of the household, but you still need to have your own.
So basically, and I think a lot of the times that's an issue that hasn't really been ironed out. Like, no one has really explained, other than from this practical viewpoint, what that statement really means, that the man is supposed to be the head of the household. And I think when people hear that, they automatically think that she can never rise above a certain level. She has to be inferior, when that statement does not mean that. That statement also doesn't mean that she has to be less than in the relationship. And I've seen it happen so many time and time again, especially in the Caribbean community, in the Haitian community, for example. Women want to speak up, but they feel like they can't. They have to stay in a relationship, or if something went bad, they blame themselves for it, So I think a lot of times that statement really does need to be ironed out, in terms of, here's what I mean by that. It needs to be, one, I believe, practically explained from a pastor or from a church perspective. And secondly, two people coming together, if they are in the church, they also need to understand what that means for the both of them. How are we going to do this together in such a way where we have some form of a hierarchy to get things done, right? And it's interesting because you also have women who are like, that's what that means. I am supposed to be less than. I am supposed to be inferior, right? And if you have a man that's like, okay, yeah, that's what that also means, then y'all go on ahead, right into the sunset with that. That's who you guys are, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That's why I say that starts from that first, second, or third date. Like, as a man, can I protect my household with this woman in it, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually?
But but can you really tell that by like the second date?
I think But I think that it comes from a level of honesty and having conversations. I think we've shied away from really having serious conversations and being honest about what we want. Like, people have a hard time communicating that in fear of what the response will be. Like, yeah, I want to know what your intentions are. Where do you see yourself going? Do you want a serious relationship? What are you looking for in a partner? How committed to you are you? Like, all of those things. And I think people don't want to have that conversation because they want to be crazy, because they don't want the person to think of them a certain way. And then you end up getting into these situationships and getting hurt because you didn't feel comfortable.
You know what?
I think that what happens is too, people don't want to have those tough conversations early on, because a lot of times from a woman's perspective, you feel that you're going to scare that man off. A lot of times too, when you have a really good thing going on, you know that you need to ask those hard questions, but you don't want to, because you feel like, okay, you're hoping and praying that he eventually gets there and addresses it. And I think a lot of times as women, we continue on this path, not really having clear expectations stated from a man, but hoping and praying that in the back of his mind, we're headed somewhere, because we're fearful of him essentially being afraid and scared away, because that does happen quite frequently, it seems, with men.
You know what I want to say real quick? I wanted to say this real fast. You know, one thing that I've realized though in dating, and then Shari, I'm gonna let you hit. One of these things I've realized in dating though is I think and you guys correct me, men, what scares men is the fact of when we try to put you specifically in that scenario. I find that when I date and I tell a man, hey, listen, or I'm having general conversation and I let it be known that, hey, I'm at the point where I'm ready for marriage. Those that aren't ready for marriage, it scares them off. But those that are, it's not a thing. It's almost like they keep on pushing and we keep on having conversation. I find that if I state, but I'm not putting an expectation on, I'm not saying that man has to be you.
Because they can sniff out
that changes,
because they can sniff out the fact that you're confident and that you'll be willing to walk away even if they're not a match. Mm-hmm. I think that's with anyone.
And that's okay. I'm like, that's okay. This is where I'm at.
I feel like most women, if not, I don't want to say all women, because that's just not the case, but most women are looking to get married, period. Especially most African American or Black women, anywhere that you meet, it's like, don't waste my time. That is always the scenario.
I think you guys are looking to get married too, a little bit later.
Exactly, and that's the case. But it was like what April was saying. Sometimes, again, a guy sees her as she's on the horizontal landscape. Like, I'm into getting married, but right now I just want to bag that. I want to hit that right now, right? And I think and that's just being very straightforward. I know you want to be. I know you're looking for a husband, but you're also bad as right now, and I want to take you home. And I think trying to say to a guy like, I don't know if this might even sound right, but trying to be a guy and trying to say like, oh, she's totally wifey and I don't just want to hit that right now. I really want to get to know her, becomes somewhat of a challenge or a cliche, because it's like you want to hang out and wife her up, but you totally also want to hit it. And I think that's where the lines start to get very skewed, because our judgment becomes cloudy when we can't hit it.
Can you exploit that a little bit?
Yeah. Sorry, why you on mute, girl? I see that you going.
Yeah, you do. You guys.
I was following him until the end of that sentence. I was like, yeah. You get cloudy when you don't hit it? I would think it's the opposite.
No, I think he's saying that it gets cloudy between your intentions and your wants.
Right.
Like,
so
you want.
I understand. So what I was going to say to what Takira said was basically, as a woman, first of all, you're absolutely right. Jean, you're right. Men, we all know, when men see you, they're attracted, they want it. We're not done, okay? We get it. We know it. And when we were young, we might have even exploited it, okay? So that's that. Now that we're older, hopefully, and wiser,
No, because I met some old hoes.
I
met some old hoes.
I said hopefully. I said, oh,
This is true. This is true.
Some old hoes.
And the thing is, when it comes to us, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not gonna bring it up. Like you said, if a man is hip to game, he already knows. I'm not trying to play games, period. So if I came across as a female that liked to play games, you're gonna quickly find out that I don't, not because of my conversation, just because of who I am as a person. Number one. Number two, I'm going to put my own boundaries up. And I think it really is up to the female as far as how long she's willing to wait for him to come around, or wait for him to figure out or to communicate where he's trying to go with that. We don't have to, from my experience, I never had to say anything.
Well, I think that's also an air that you give off, a confidence that you give off. I think people can tell by the way that you move, by watching how you move and the standards and the boundaries that you have. They speak for themselves. And if you're operating with the best and the highest intentions, that's going to call in somebody that's going to be operating on that same frequency, that same wavelength too. But I think
to add to that, I'm gonna let you. But to add to that, you're right. And even if a man has never operated on that in his whole life, when he comes to me, if he's like, she's worth it, I'm going to level up. Otherwise,
and fail miserably.
Whatever. It's a learning experience.
It's
a learning experience. And that's how I look at it. But like April said, and if he can't, or if he fails miserably, then he'll keep on moving. And I'm not going to feel some kind of way. I'm not going to feel like I gave so much and I wasted.
But I think that's what it is. I think that's where people get stuck, is that realizing that they did give so much and they end up in this like negative loop of chasing the person now and this cat and mouse game. And the guy getting what he wants, but then as a woman, we're crying at home and we're crying ourselves to sleep because we had sex when we didn't want to, and now we're attached, and it ends up in this big old snowball.
If I can add to the listeners a solution for something like this, is if you find a guy and he really wants to hit it, and it's obvious he really wants to bag it, like do what Halal said, and if you're interested in this dude, pursue him. Pursue to get to know him, pursue to be very interested in him. Don't toe the line, which is what some women like to do, and they take advantage of the situation. I think that would be like a really good solution from a male perspective. Like if I'm,
what does that look like?
Yeah, I was gonna have to say, could you elaborate a little bit more on the word perspective?
That sounded like a little bit of like a stage 5 clinger to me.
Well, it's like. Clearly, we're going on a date because of interest from both sides, right? She's probably erring on the side of, oh my gosh, this could be my next husband, my next my kids. I don't know. This.
Wait, who are you dating? Because that is not. You need to get out of LA.
This is not where sometimes conditions are things. Like
you sound like Hillel. It sounds like you guys are dating the same girls with the same her.
No. Wait, let's talk about what kind of women y'all attracted to. That's a good question.
Who are you dating trying to make you be their
on
daddy?
The first date?
Right.
On the first date, they like, this is my baby daddy.
Who are these women?
Like for real?
Some girls will already start texting you daddy. Hey daddy, good morning,
No,
daddy.
that's a red flag. They're called red flags.
So those are my clients.
So you might need to evaluate the type of women that you're choosing.
You don't have to bag everybody. You don't have to bag them. You can say no.
Say that again to Kira.
You know,
saying, he heard
circle
it the first time.
Because I think one of the things I'm noticing is like, okay, there has to be a sex talk at some point in time,
Right.
You ready to segue in there to the sex?
Say that again?
Go ahead.
I'm saying, like, we're not virgins. Let's be serious. Like, we've all, we're sexual human beings, and what we're trying to do at this point in the stage is try and say, okay, how long can I not have sex with this person and see who they really are? But, then there's this other part that comes out. It's like, okay, you're trying to get married to them. Now you get married and you walk into marriage. Like, yeah, you have this wedding day, but fast forward, then your marriage starts. And if you look at the statistics for marriage, 50% of marriages, whether they're Christian or not, are ending in divorce, okay? Less than 10% of marriages are thriving. And once you get past that step of like another realm of things to deal with, you have your finances, you have children, you have careers, you have culture to think about. You also have people that your friends that want to come visit. You got, it's a whole nother game. And sex? Yeah, right. Like, you ask average married couple how often they're having sex.
Well, let's ask. Shari?
I'm pregnant.
What's she say?
A lot of sex.
That shouldn't change anything.
Right?
We're good.
So maybe Shari's in that 10%.
You're
that
thriving, girl.
Thriving. You know what I mean? But it's like, what I'm saying is there's the fun part of dating, but then you also don't want to get so compacted that you're like, oh my gosh, everything has to work out right now. You're talking about being with somebody for a very, 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 very long time, and also thriving person. And that's why I think it goes back to soulmates and twin flames and understanding who you are as a person. Like, put the expectation on the woman to be the one to be the leader in a relationship. That's not fair. Like, the woman shouldn't, like Shari's saying, like, I'm wanting that man to level up and come see me on this level. Well, what if both of you are on that same level and you met? That would make things a whole lot easier. Like, huh?
I was saying, yes, that's perfect. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to be at the same level. So, yeah.
And that's where I think we get off track, is like, we're having sex with people that aren't on our level. Like, you want to have sex with people that are on your level, Gene.
Well, so disagree with that. I'm gonna have to disagree with that, right? Because
Wait, what? You're disagreeing?
I know. I'm disagreeing with him on this in this retrospect. It's sometimes you pursue someone just for the physical, just because they're on the horizontal landscape. And if they're interested in having sex with you, then obviously you're both on the same level. But that's just what it means. That's just all that it was.
Not necessarily. Not
Right.
Tap into what you were saying about mindfulness and your spiritual walk, and
Right.
taking on somebody else's energy and taking something else, you're bringing that onto you. So all those insecurities and struggles that they're going through, that essentially you're inviting that into your space. So the cloud of confusion.
What I'm saying is, I'm not saying that it's right and that it's wrong, but what I'm saying is that sometimes we pursue people for different things, and that should just be what that was for. And if it's just because someone is physically attractive and we're not really looking to get on the same vertical landscape with them, then I think that time is just time to just walk away, to be like, hey, look, I was interested in you because you were just bad and I wanted to hit it, but clearly that's not happening. I'm leaving. I'm not interested.
But I have a question. Okay. So that can't be without consequence.
No.
Like, I think that would be hindering. If the main goal is for you and this other person to be on the same level, entering into this permanent partnership, right? You taking on this extra emotional and spiritual baggage.
I'm not saying it's a permanent partnership. The
No,
goal
I'm
is
talking about when you're about to go into marriage, right? If you're preparing,
I wasn't going in that respect. The premise as to why I made that statement was simply because if we're going on a date, there's an interest from both parties, right? It was not going, let's say this is our very first date. We're going on our very first date. My intention as to why I might be interested in this one specific person is clearly physical.
So what I'm saying,
how many of your dates actually end up on a third or fourth?
What is it?
How many of your dates actually get past a first date?
Gene, you never had a second date before?
I have had a second date.
That's a fair question.
I have, So one, it's always going to depend on where you're at in your life.
Yes.
But when I was younger, sometimes it wouldn't be a second or a third date, you know, because it was just clear in terms of what's happening, where this is going, and it would just be that. Right?
For both parties?
For both parties, right?
So we're talking about people that are operating out of ego, lower vibrational, just like trying to just fit a need.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So not someone who literally wants to elevate.
Every situation is different. Sometimes you need a person.
What?
You're going to go on a date, but you've been talking to them and texting them for like a month. You know?
Before you date?
Before you guys actually meet.
He had
like that.
to work. He had to work a little bit.
Wait.
You know?
Gotcha.
We've been there.
Is this your level up journey? Is this the beginning? Is this step 2?
No, this is like years ago. This is
the old experience.
Years ago. And the reason why, one, I think it's important for us to talk about this is because we still have a lot of guys in their late 30s, early 40s that still operate at that level.
Yes.
And they're trying to figure out why aren't things working. So it's really beneficial for us to talk about, like, so, hey, this is a thing. You're not alone. If you're looking to grow, that's not a safe place to be. Because like I said earlier, I know a lot of guys today that still operate like that, you know?
So I have a question. So how does a man sort of graduate from that, situation?
Right.
Like, what is the journey that a man goes through to get him from there to where he actually knows what he wants and he starts dating with purpose?
Yeah.
What was your breaking point?
Yeah.
A really good growth journey, a really good wish list for a growth journey for a male is to find out what is his mentorship cycle like. What other men did he have in his life to teach him about how to be a man, right? Once you can analyze that, once a woman can say like, okay, it looks like this guy is respectable. It looks like that, he knows what he wants in a woman. He's very upfront. He's very forthcoming. It looks like he knows that we're on the same path. Then I think that's a safe way to really take a look at a guy, to really know where he's at. For me, I didn't have a father growing up. So I had to really learn everything on my own. And going to Howard University and not really having a lot of self-confidence, and then having to deal with new realities and new tastes and new types of ways to approach people. I had to figure things out on my own, and it was painful. Like my sister, she's interested in having kids now. I'm like, don't do it with a male figure in the house for the boys. Don't do it. It's just not healthy for him. So I would for another boy to go through with what I had to go through. The breaking point for me really came to where I had to tell myself, okay, who am I as a person? I had to do the work on myself to really say, what do I want in a spouse and in someone? But it's very nerve-wracking because you don't want to mess up. You want to do right. You want to make sure this person is safe. You want to be the best kind of person that you are. You want to be spiritually sane. You want to be physically sane. You want your hormones to be in balance. You want to be able to view that person as that physical and spiritual partner that you want them to be. So for me, I think, and for other Black guys that are listening to this that weren't raised with a father, you have to really take a step back and do the work on yourself to ask yourself, what do you like? What don't you like? What are you into? What are you looking for? And then once you actually have those things, you can start to really do the work and say, okay, now when I see someone, this is where they are in my life. Maybe I'm not interested in pursuing a serious relationship with this person. And as one of you ladies was saying earlier, communication is painstakingly important, very important. When you meet a girl and you're talking to them to say, so, hey, I think you're beautiful and you're gorgeous. I'd love to spend the night with you. What is that conversation? I'm not looking for that right now. Okay, so what are you looking for? I'm looking, for something serious. Okay, I'm not looking for something serious right now, so this is not going to work. Okay, well then maybe we can spend the night together. Okay, we'll go. Let's that. Dara's like, what's that?
No, I mean, honestly, I kid you
Like,
not.
how we
That's
go
a real
from
thing.
I'm not looking for that to okay, let's do it.
No,
I love how blunt he
it's
is about
it's a
it.
real thing.
That's what happens
No,
a lot of times.
It
A lot of
happens.
times. It happens.
Because the self-worth gets involved, and you meet a woman that wants so desperately to change someone's mind or wants to be in a relationship, so they'll just give into, all right, I'll just go over, but I won't do anything, and then
Or hoping to change his mind.
but that's human nature. I mean,
exactly,
you do, especially when you really like someone, and
exactly.
if your first time having a conversation, then absolutely you're like, yeah, I wasn't really thinking about marriage right now.
Yeah, but also now I'm sure you can attest to this too. It's like sometimes you can have that conversation. You can say, so hey, I'm interested in just hanging out, having a good time. She's like, I'm looking for something serious. And you're like, okay. And then you become friends. And then as you're friends, you guys actually end up messing around, right? And as you mess around with this girl, you find out like, oh my gosh, she's legit cool. Like I could totally hang out with her. And before you know it, a guy starts catching feelings. And then she's the one that puts you on the back burner, being like, well, you weren't looking for anything serious. You just wanted to have a good time. And you're like, yeah, but you want to kind of take things seriously. And then the tables turn, So it really just depends.
I think that is really important. You sort of touched on a few practical ways in which to do that. I think a lot of times men sort of get stuck, and what I find is that a lot of times as women, we do the work. We're intentional. We're almost taught to do the work. You need to have certain things in place from a taking care of a home perspective, making sure that you can run a household, making sure you can cook. But a lot of times, what I don't see is that same intentional work effort happening for a man to prepare and to level up. So I think what you mentioned about some practical ways in which a man can do it, because I think a lot of times men are almost kind of stuck, especially if they haven't seen that male figure growing up. They really don't know what to do. They don't know why they're not prepared. They just know that they aren't. I wonder if it's almost the same for men as it is for women. I think that you almost have to know what your end goal is. What does that look like for you? You know what I mean? So if a person can kind of sit back and really take the time to really evaluate what that end goal looks like for them and sort of specify, this is the type of man that I want to be, this type of father even that I want to be. And kind of quantify that and specify what that looks like. Then he can then look at where he is today and try to fill in the gap for that. And try to determine, okay, here are the actionable steps that I need to take in order to look like that.
To answer to Kara's question, mentors are huge. Like having mentors around you, like that are able to talk about, their experiences and share how they got through them. And be able to pour into younger men and say, look, if you're trying to get ready to be married to somebody, you need to be doing this. You need to be spending the time by yourself. It's like when Pastor Kelly would say, like, what are you doing when you're waiting for that person to come along? Like, what are we doing when we're waiting? Like, we're having faith in God, but then how are we taking care of ourselves? Like, how are we growing and developing mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually to be the man that I need to be for that woman that's going to come along and be my potential, wife? There's that huge intentionality to it. So the mentors and knowing who those mentors are and being able to meet those mentors, like men, for women that are listening, like you should be able to see that man. And if it's like a month in and he hasn't introduced you to any of his mentors, then maybe he really is just trying to hit it and quit it. You know what I mean? Like you should be able to say, hey, come on, I'm going to introduce you to this guy over here because this is the family that I want to be like. Here's my plan to get to this level of a thriving marriage where I'm like Shari and I'm when it comes to the sex question. You know what I
And
mean?
pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you definitely have to surround yourself, whether you're male or female, with people that can get you to that next level and can pour into you.
And ladies, can we be safe to say, like, this kind of stuff really needs to be happening at like month 6 or 7 in a dating relationship? Is that safe to say?
What is 6 or 7 weeks?
I would even stress it a little earlier.
I know, maybe a little
I think
earlier
it
than that.
depends on where the people are at. I
Yeah.
mean, if he's done a little bit of work and he sees that he's interested in this woman up front, like, I don't know where this is gonna go, but I'm very interested in you, then you should probably see it a little sooner than month 7.
Yeah, you see it within the first 30 to 60 days. Like, let's be serious.
If
Like,
you visit his
If you
I
know
would
where you're
hope
going.
that there would be 6 dates within the 60 days.
like, but that's the thing. Like, it's like Jean said, you got to know yourself. You got to take that time to know yourself. If you don't know yourself, you shouldn't be dating. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
People
don't
do
waste
that.
a woman's time by just putting yourself out there like, oh, here, look at me. Like, I got all this success or I got all this going on. But in the end of the day, I'm really just trying to get in your panties. Like, that's not fair, I think.
Let's speak on that.
But are you stating that? How are you stating those intentions to a female?
But wait, let me just
Go.
Exactly
Yeah.
how I said I have been. Like, I tell them straight up, I'm like, I think we're just better off being friends. Like, there's no point in going on a second. Like, if I can't, here's my dating algorithm, if you will.
I think this is where we both differ. But go ahead, hello.
Oh, yeah, because we're at different stages in our lives. Like, that's huge, and there's no problem with we're different.
Also, you've been through marriage, divorce, and all of that. Like, that is, and that's why
with a daughter.
And
like,
that's why everything you're saying, I'm taking it as like it's like $1 million check. Like, I kid you not. Like,
Well, I mean, and I appreciate that. You know, I've gone through the process. I was preparing myself for marriage, got through marriage, went through marriage, and now, you know, I've healed from it, and I'm ready to move on and get back into a relationship. But I know exactly where that needs to be in that connection. I also got to think, like, I have a little 2-year-old girl that is rapidly growing up, and what do I want to show her? I want to show her, hey, you know, this is how daddy acts. This is how mommy acts. This is how you're going to stop. You know, the other statistic that I'll drop out there is 93% of women that have been has a mother that have been divorced end up in a divorce. 93%. So that means my daughter has a 7% chance of not ending up in a divorce. Yeah. I'm just gonna let that sink in. And you take into the statistic that she's African American descent, and also all these other minorities, then it's even like, oh my gosh, you really have like a 2 to 3% chance of not ending up in a divorce. So there's a lot more that I need to learn about myself to show her so she can prevent that from happening to her, and she can know how to date. You know what I mean? You know, the other thing that Jean was bringing up was also that you didn't have a father growing up. I was blessed to have a mother and father. Today is actually their anniversary, their 46-year anniversary.
Happy anniversary!
Oh, yes.
Congratulations!
That's you need to call them. But
you have to call. You haven't called them yet?
No, we were texting throughout the day. We have like a group text with the family. But you know, one of the most important things that I've learned from having a mother and father that were married and that were also Christian is a concept in a relationship overlooked a lot, and it's called forgiveness. And I'm not talking about when it comes to cheating or stuff like that. I'm just talking about day-to-day forgiveness in moments for whether your spouse, your mate, the tone that they use with you, or they forgot to do something, or they didn't show up how you expected them to do, and you want to hold that against them. And a lot of times that happens, and it really becomes an issue that leads back to how I said earlier about trust. And that person can't trust you, then, especially for women, what I realized is that masculine side starts to come out again, where the women's masculine side of, I need to control this environment. I need to take care of X, Y, and Z, not just the finances. I need to take care of the food. I need to take care of the shopping. I need to take care of the you know, whatever it is, task that needs to be done. She now he needs to do it because it's the man. And the man, because the man's slipping or whatever the case may be. And so that's where that, you start having those discussions early on about, like, well, what does forgiveness look like you? Like, that's part of the roadmap. Like, what does forgiveness look like you? Have you been hurt? How have you gotten over that hurt? And I think the more male and female are willing to talk about those skeletons that have been inside, that's how you know that person is being transparent with you. And so before you start having the drinks and getting into the bedroom with that person, you got to have those conversations about vulnerability where you're not being taken advantage of, but it's just to learn, like, hey, wow, we're better off being friends. Or, wow, I do want to get to know you better because there are some things there that I think we can connect on and we could build a future together. And, it's an amazing thing when people can talk about what they've been through. And from my experience, women are more in tune with that because of just, you all have the fancy or psychological rationale behind it, but it's just women are created differently and to be nature nurture to one another, and it helps them to deal with stuff and be able to express that better. Whereas men are just like, yo, it is what it is. It happened. I got over it. And I didn't want to take that path after divorce. I really wanted to go through all of the emotions and also understand exactly, like, how do I prevent this from happening? And it comes down to—
You did your work.
You did your work. And that self-analysis at the end is so important because a lot of times after relationships, people are, tend to point the finger at the other person, but
or jump into another relationship.
Yeah, so it's important that you say, okay, what was the part that I played in this? And it sounds like you kind of did that self-analysis that was required so that you don't make some of the same mistakes the last time and don't carry it into the next relationship.
Exactly. And it's like Jean said, you have to take the time to meditate. You have to take the time to learn yourself. And as you're learning yourself, though, don't settle or don't give up. And I think a lot of the time people give up because of the expectation of, like, we alluded to this earlier about, like, oh, I'm at a certain age, whether I'm a male or female, I'm like, at a certain age, I need to give up, or mom and dad expect me to do this. I used to tell my mom, like, Mom, I'm 30 years old. You want a baby? I can go make a baby tomorrow with anybody. That's not a problem. But, and she's like, okay, fine. I'm not going to say that to you anymore. So, we got past that conversation, but, it's like not giving up, stay in the pace of just evolving and enjoying the process of life. Like, and then surrounding yourself with those environment and those people that will allow you to get better. And then you can connect with the person that you're hopefully is your twin flame.
I think it's really important that we start with the individual. When we are really intentional about just being in our solitude and going inward and figuring stuff out and doing the work and building our confidence, it makes the chances of us being in situations where we're getting taken advantage of or we're manipulating the situation, it decreases that because we're not willing to put our heart on the line or put somebody else's heart on the line because our confidence is higher, we have standards, we are okay with walking away from situations that don't serve us. So I think that if we enter into relationships whole, we can decrease some of those issues that we enter into when we are struggling with really making decisions and having our boundaries and standards.
Yeah, and also decreasing the amount of baggage. I feel like, each relationship that we enter into, if there's baggage that can be collected, and if we don't do the work, like you're saying, Keish, to get rid of it, we want to try to prevent from continually adding negative baggage, to ourselves.
Yeah.
And Keisha, that is phenomenal that you just said that, especially the part about wholeness. Like, a lot of people don't understand that concept of, like, how can I be whole before I get with somebody else?
Yeah.
Usually in a relationship, you have one person that's doing the pulling and one person that's doing the pushing. and it's not like two whole people coming together. And some people give off this vibe that they are whole, and the only way to know if they really are whole is if you're whole yourself, and you can pick up on their holiness, so to say.
Yeah, no, true. That's true.
But you know, that is very profound, and that's what I say. Like, that leads also into that whole, into the twin flame concept of being whole. Is a person that's whole sees wholeness. And they see it through the vibration, through the frequency, to that energy. And that's where it's like, okay, we can grow together. And you don't have these kind of conversations about, I'm not trying to take advantage of you. I'm just trying to be in your presence so that I can understand you. I'm just so curious about you, and I want to grow with you, as opposed to, I just want to get in your panties, or I want to take your, you know, I want to take your finances. I want you to buy me a Louis Vuitton or a Gucci or whatever the case may be. Like, no, it's above that. It's a higher vibrational frequency that the two people are connecting on, so that they can just have influence in their community and be that power couple that really becomes, like Jean says, is that mentor to others, so that they can grow and develop and mentor other people, and the legacy continue. So,
and end up married for 46 years.
There you go.
You feel me?
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Live to tell it.
I won't flip the 46. I've accepted that. I'm cool if
Don't say that. Don't speak that over your life. You're going to be giving interviews to CNN when you're 115 with your wife putting the teeth in your mouth, and you're going to talk about how you made it through.
Yeah.
He's gonna brush, so he's gonna have his.
By that time, you'll have to.
Right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in for another Captivating Women. We are out.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome.
Bye.
Well, stay away. Wash your hands.
Oh, yeah.